We're continuing through the story of Samuel, and we're going to be reading passages from 1 Samuel chapter 17. This is the story of David and Goliath. It's kind of a classic story. One of the problems with a classic story is when you know a story, your mind fills in the blanks. And so you kind of overlook some things. So we're going to talk about some things that might get overlooked today. Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle. And there came out of the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. The weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. He had greaves of bronze on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And his shield bearer went before him. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "Today I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all of Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and afraid. Now Saul and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, took the provisions, and went as Jesse had commanded him. He came to the encampment as the army was going forth to the battle line, shouting a war cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage, ran to the ranks, and went and greeted his brothers. As he talked with them, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. David heard him. David said to Saul, "Let no one's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Saul said to David, "You're not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are just a boy, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and whenever a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went after it and struck it down, rescuing the lamb from its mouth. And if it turned against me, I would catch it by the jaw, strike it down, and kill it. Your servant has killed both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, since he has defied the armies of the living God." David said, "The Lord who saved me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will save me from the hand of the Philistine." So Saul said to David, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a bronze helmet on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. David strapped Saul's sword over the armor, and he tried in vain to walk, for he wasn't used to them. And then David said to Saul, "I can't walk with these because I'm not used to them." So David removed them. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the wadi and put them in his shepherd's bag in the pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. The Philistine came on and drew near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. The Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the wild animals of the field." But David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel whom you have defied. This very day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the Philistine army this very day to the birds of the air and to the wild animals of the earth, so that the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all the assembly may know that the Lord does not save by sword and spear. The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." When the Philistine drew near to David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and it struck the Philistine on his forehead. And the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down to the ground. It's the word of God for God's people.
Thanks be to God.
Goliath had a secret. Given his size, he had always been the subject of speculation. How did he get so big? Whose family does he come from? And it didn't take long for the commanders of the army to notice this young boy that was very large growing up to be a very large and strong man. And it didn't take long for Goliath to find himself as a foot soldier. For a while, some people saw Goliath's size as a challenge, and they would take him on just because he was big, just to be able to make a name for themselves. He was intimidating, and he learned to let his size be a strength. He was the champion for his army. What that means is it was accustomed that if two armies came together for battle, rather than have the bloodshed of everybody, each army would pick a man and meet each other. And whoever's man won that fight won the battle. Goliath was their champion, and he always won. Goliath was infantry. Heavy armor, large spear, sword. He was best at close combat, where his strength gave him the most advantage. But wherever Goliath went, he always managed to raise people's curiosity, especially when Goliath would go into battle. See, Goliath did something that most foot soldiers never did. Goliath had a shield bearer, someone to carry his shield. And that's kind of different for a foot soldier. You see, archers need a shield bearer. An archer needs someone to hold the shield because they use both hands. A foot soldier never lets go of his shield. It's shield in one hand, weapon in the other. And so when he walked with a shield bearer, people wondered about that. What does that mean? No one really knows why, sometime knew back then why a person was born with such size and such strength. The word giantism hasn't been written up to that point. Nobody really knew what a pituitary gland was back then, how it can run amok and send out excessive growth hormone. And certainly no one had ever heard the word andromegaly before, which is the medical word for someone who has a pituitary gland that goes haywire and they become really, really large. And certainly nobody knew that people who suffer from this disorder are also affected in the eyes, that they are almost blind, and it is impossible, nearly impossible to see. His commander knew Goliath's secret, and so did his shield bearer, because the shield bearer was not there to carry the shield. He was there to help Goliath find where he was supposed to go, because he couldn't get there on his own. Goliath was immense, strong, and covered in armor, but he is also big and slow and nearly blind. Goliath never stood a chance. David was really glad to be sent to the battlefield. If for anything else, it got him away from the sheep for a while. Oh, the endless hours of being a shepherd. The shepherd, it's the lowliest of tasks. And, David would often think to himself, it would be better to not be born at all than to be born as the youngest and have to do all the menial tasks. Hour after hour of boredom tending the sheep. He tried to find ways to pass the time. He liked to make up little poems and sing them to the sheep. But the sheep never appreciated his prose. He liked to go and find stones and practice slinging the stone wherever he could. He would look for targets. He would go and see a bush some 30 yards away, and he could look at that bush, and in his mind's eye, it could become a bear or a lion, and he'd load up a stone in his sling, and he'd swing it, and then let it go. And he could picture that stone as it hit the bush, striking a lion. And the lion collapses in a heap and releases the lamb from his mouth. Every bush within 3 miles got to experience this probably a dozen times. Because when you're a shepherd and you're by yourself, there's just nothing to do. But one of the things David noticed was he actually got pretty good at it. And on the rare occasion when a lion or a bear did come into view, David was both scared and excited, but he never missed his mark. And he realized he was pretty good at slinging the stone. But today was exciting. He was going to bring some food to his brothers and go up to the battle line. Maybe he would actually see a battle. He couldn't wait to meet his brothers and hear their heroic stories. And as he arrives, what luck! The battle is about to begin. So he leaves the servant with him and goes and runs into the battle line to greet his brothers. And as they are heading to the battle line, coming up from behind the Philistine lines was the largest man he'd ever seen. The man issued a challenge. He had heard about giants before, but he'd never seen one. And he was scary to behold. And he heard the man yell, "Send me a man and we will settle this matter, just the two of us." And then something happened that David never expected. The army of Israel turned around and ran away. He had never heard a story about the army of Israel running away. Those stories were never told. He assumed it never happened. And so David ran with them just to keep up with the group. But even as he ran, he could feel shame in his own soul. The army of Yahweh fleeing the battle. He learned that had gone on for a while. They get to the battlefield. Goliath emerges, issues a challenge, and the army flees. Now David finds himself in the presence of Saul, and Saul looks worried and afraid. David offers to be his champion. Saul dismissed him at first, but David persisted. Now he's marching down the hill alone. No armor, no sword. Just a sling and 5 smooth stones. He laughed at how absurd it was when he tried to put on Saul's armor. It was just too big. He knew that it wouldn't help him. He also thought, well, I would look pretty impressive dressed as a warrior. But David had kind of accepted his place in life, because once you've been a shepherd long enough, you're at the bottom. You kind of give up on impressing people at that point, because you can only go up from there. So David is marching down the hill alone. He sized up his opponent. His opponent was big and obviously strong, but he was slower than any lion. And his head, the only exposed part of his body, his head was about the size of a bear's head. And the same imagination that could turn a bush into a lion or a bear turned Goliath's head into a bear's head. With a staff in one hand and spinning a sling in the other, he focused on his target and began to run. You know, on the surface, the story of David and Goliath is a simple one. It's a faith story, right? David had faith. He believed that God would give him the victory, and so he goes on and takes on Goliath, and his faith gives him the victory. And it is a faith story, and it took faith for David to go to take on Goliath. And the story of David and Goliath is everywhere. Every sports program you watch where there's an underdog, you'll hear David and Goliath. Only a fool would bet on David. Goliath always carries the day. Did Goliath have andromegaly? We don't know. But there are some clues in Scripture, some things that get missed. Obviously, he had to be large for some reason, right? Something made him very, very large. And listen to some of the things that Goliath says that are really, they're out of place, but we don't notice it because we know the story so well. Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? David was a shepherd. He had one staff in his hand. Goliath saw more than one staff. Was he seeing double? Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air. Come to me. Get close to me. A soldier can only hit a target he can see. He has to be close to his opponent to be able to win the battle. And the shield bearer, it is true, only archers have shield bearers. Why a shield bearer? To help him find the battlefield. To paraphrase an old mafia movie, Goliath brought a spear to a sling fight and he lost. Goliath is every insurmountable challenge that comes before us. Goliaths are intimidating, and from a distance they look like they have every advantage. And David was the unlikeliest of heroes. Born youngest in his family, given the lowliest of tasks. From a human point of view, not much would be expected from David. And yet the set of circumstances that made David look small was actually a training ground for the day when he would have one of his greatest victories. You know, every time a Goliath is defeated, it begins with someone believing that they have a chance. Every time a David steps forward, their willingness to make an attempt is an act of faith. And we all face challenges at times that are insurmountable. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that everything can be overcome, because some things can't. Some things can't. Part of wisdom is learning to pick your battles and know which ones to step into. But part of faith is being willing to step into a battle without having all of the information. Before walking away from a trial, I want you to remember the real lesson of David and Goliath. The lesson is this: whatever challenge you face, the thing that makes it big and intimidating is also more than likely the thing that hides a weakness. And the closer you get to that challenge, the more likely it is that you will spot it. And the other lesson is this: no matter where you come from, no matter your station in life, God has used that time to prepare you to overcome that challenge. We don't look back and say, I can't do this because I come from here. We look forward and say, God was with me back then, and God is with me today. Our Goliaths are never all powerful, and our own experiences never keep us away from being able to be successful. Our weaknesses become strengths. I've shared with you that Julie, my wife, is a history teacher, but that's not her original background. Her original background, she taught special ed. And as a special ed teacher, she worked with students who have learning disabilities, and one of the most common ones was dyslexia. A dyslexic person has trouble reading. Words jump around on the page sometimes. And sometimes when a person that's dyslexic reads words, they don't enter into the neural processors fast enough. And so a child that's dyslexic is usually not caught till they're about 8 or 9 years old. And by then, because he or she hasn't been able to read, a child grows up, they're already behind academically. And if they're embarrassed or they're frustrated, they'll act out. They'll act out to kind of hide the fact that they can't do what everybody else does. And Malcolm Gladwell had written a book about this, and he talked about how the weaknesses of being dyslexic become a strength. He talked about a neuroscientist who had been studying dyslexia and was looking at the way that dyslexics compensate for their weakness. And she found in her experience that some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world were dyslexic. She was standing in front of a group of donors to the university, and if you've been invited to the university as a donor, something's been named after you. You're a big donor. She's standing there in a room full of donors, and she said, I just got a question. How many of you are dyslexic? Half the room raised their hand. Gladwell began to say, why is that? Why is it? Because of their compensation. David Boyer is an attorney, but he grew up in the Midwest. His parents were educators, and he was dyslexic. He was able to hide it from his mother because when she would read to him, he would hang on every word and memorize the story so that when she got the books out, he could see the picture and know what the words were. And so he was able to hide it from his mother. But eventually, it began to catch up with him. And he said, getting through high school was a battle, but I got through. He graduated high school, got married, got a job in construction, and was having the time of his life. And then they had a baby, and his wife told him, I think it's time for you to go to college so that we can elevate our income a little bit and have a better future for our child. And he knew that day would come. He started taking studies, and he thought, it's strange, I've always wanted to be an attorney. But being an attorney, going to law school, is heavy reading. It happened to be in a time when you didn't have to have your undergraduate degree to go to law school. So he took the minimum coursework he had to take. and he got to law school. He couldn't read all the law books, but he could read the briefs. And it wasn't really adequate just to read the briefs, but he did something else. When he went to law school, he didn't take notes. He sat there and memorized everything that every professor said. It stuck with him. And his great memory and his attention to detail and a little bit of reading was enough. And he became an attorney. He became a litigator. He's in the state of California. He ended up being one of the most devastating litigators in the state of California. The reason was this. He knew how to listen. He had to listen well to be able to keep up with things because he couldn't read. And so when he's cross-examining a witness, he could hear every nuance of what they were saying. And if the witness hesitated just a little bit in an answer, more than usual, he noticed. And he knew either they're being deceptive or they're not sure what they're talking about. And he would pounce. And he also could remember everything that was said in court from the beginning of the trial. So if a witness contradicted themselves or contradicted something else that was said in the case, he could quote that back from memory and challenge the witness. He ended up leading one of the antitrust cases against Microsoft, and David ended up being one of the greatest litigators in the state of California. Why? Because the weakness he grew up with as a child ended up giving him the capacity to have his strength. David and Goliath is a faith story. It took faith for David to step forward, but it also took faith to believe that his past prepared him. And it took faith to believe that whatever Goliath was in front of him, that there would be a way to overcome. And that's the story of David and Goliath. Your weakness can be your greatest strength. And the greatest strength of the problem you face could be hiding the pathway towards a solution. Let's pray together. God, we are grateful for your love and your presence in this room, and we are grateful that you equip us at every stage in our lives. Anyone here who's facing a Goliath today, God, I pray that you will increase their strength, that you will help them to look back on their past and realize that you have been equipping them all along for this moment. And when we face a Goliath, God, help us not just look at its size and its strength, but to recognize the weaknesses as well. It's in Christ's name.